Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Heart Hook Home Video Crochet Podcast series. This week, we are going to be discussing something that I may or may not be very good at, but something that I get a lot of questions on, and that is yarn organization. A lot of questions that I field either on the YouTube channel or the Facebook page or on the blog comments or an email even is about my yarn wall. Do I use it? Does it get dusty? How do you know what yarn it is? How do you know what color it is? And so we're just going to answer some of those questions today. We are also going to talk about different ways of just organizing your yarn or your projects in general. So for me, like I said, I am really not doing that great lately at keeping my projects and my yarn organized. So maybe this will be the kick in the rear that I need as well to make sure that I am doing everything that I can to, number one, keep everything organized, and number two, keep my focus. I feel like, especially this time of year, I know that, this podcast will be up forever, but right now, in the real world, it's the middle of December, right? In my world right now, and which means that it is crunch time, like it is past crunch time, and I have projects and yarn literally vomited all over my studio. Like it's unbelievable how much it's everywhere, right? It just is. I have one closet, actually I have two closets in my bedroom, and one of them is completely dedicated to yarn and craft supplies, and that one really desperately needs to be cleaned up. So I'm hoping that this will be the kick in the rear that I need to get that going. So first off, I wanted to talk a little bit about this yarn wall behind me. What I did to make this, and I do have a full tutorial for the yarn wall, which I will link in the description of this video below, a complete how-to as to what kind of hooks you need to buy, what kind of spacers you need to buy, what kind of pegboard you need to buy, and how to hang it, etc. So make sure you check that out if you are interested at all in seeing how to make the yarn walls. Now, I do have another one, since my blog name is Heart Hook Home. It's bunch of H's, right? I do have a pegboard that we cut out into the shape of a giant H, and it's maybe 4 feet tall and maybe, I don't know, 2.5 feet wide, something like that. And I'll put a little inlay of that somewhere in this video, but it's absolutely gorgeous. So if you want to do your last name, your initial, or your first initial, or anything like that, that would be a really cute way to do that as well. If you're looking for just a smaller space where you just want to maybe put all of your mandala cakes up, and that's it, and you don't want to do like a gradient like I have behind me. I really love the rainbow effect that this had. So what I recommend when you're looking at building a yarn wall, go to Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, wherever, whatever you have available to you, and get yourself some pegboard. Generally speaking, they are going to be 4 feet tall. So this behind me right here, this is 4 feet tall. I'm pretty far away from it. So if I get closer to it, you can see that it's a lot bigger than it looks, right? So it is 4 feet tall, and they usually come in sections that are either 4 feet wide or 8 feet wide. So what I have behind me is 4 feet by 4 feet and 4 feet by 8 feet for a total of 12 feet wide. So it's pretty ginormous. When you walk in the room, it's just like, what, and I love it. I crave it. It's beautiful. It wakes me up in the morning. It's got those, great vibrancy. The juices are flowing. The creativity is running strong. It's just amazing. I love it. So get yourself some pegboard. You can always cut it to size. You can hang it however you want. And honestly, the pegboards are super inexpensive, which is another fantastic reason why you should have a yarn wall. So one of the other selling points, if you're trying to sell it to someone in your house, wink, wink, it gets it up off the floor. You're not using up cupboards. You're not using up a bookcase, or you're not using up these, cubbies that you have to buy that are like $60 on Amazon. You buy one pegboard. Don't quote me on this, but I think the 4 foot by 4 foot square is only like $15 at Lowe's, something like that. So it's pretty inexpensive. You will have to buy some screws and some spacers, and I did link to the specific screws and spacers that I used in hanging this yarn wall behind me. But literally that's it. All you have to do is hang it up. You need the little peggy hooks, slip them on there, and you might be able to see, I don't know how obvious it is, but you can see, especially on these darker colors over here, I feel like a meteorologist right now, on these darker colors over here blowing in from the east, right? You can see that there's these tiny little metal hooks sticking out. You can see them, but on a lot of them, they don't have it. So you really don't need hooks for every single ball of yarn that you're going to hang. It's not necessary. As long as you've got them mostly, you know, interspersed with these hooks that keep the bigger balls in place, you can kind of just shove every, you know, other balls in there here and there, and it'll be just fine. It's not going anywhere, right? I mean, hopefully not going anywhere. And if it does, add another hook, it'll be fine. So you don't have to go crazy on the hooks. You don't have to count all of the yarn balls that you have and think, oh my gosh, I need 180 hooks, because that can get pricey. Nope, you just need enough to hold them into place so that you can kind of squeeze them around. And then once you get enough up there, you can continue to just kind of squeeze them in the smaller balls as they will fit, right? So one question I get a lot is, what about the yarn? Like, how do you know what yarn it is? Well, most of the yarn that is on this wall behind me has been gifted to me. Most of it was from one of two people, well, three people. My friend Barb, her grandmother passed away a couple years ago, and she gave me several humongous, the big Rubbermaid totes full of old yarn that are partial skeins, that is either, you know, really scratchy that I couldn't buy anywhere else, which fine, you know, I'll use it for something maybe, but if I don't, it's still gonna look pretty. So I feel like I'm still getting value out of what she donated to the cause, you know what I mean? My stepsister, her grandmother passed away, and she gave me a bunch of yarn as well, which was lovely. And my sister, when I went to visit her a few years ago, she was destashing some of her yarn, and she let me go through, and so I took a lot of what she gave me, and that is up there as well. So this is not all yarn that I have personally purchased myself. Most of it was either gifted to me or was thrifted, you know, very inexpensively. So there is that. Most of it is partial skeins or only one skein, or it didn't even have a label, so I don't even know what it is. I mean, most of them that are up there are worsted weight yarns. That is one thing that I do not waver from much. I think I only have one or two balls up there that are not a worsted weight yarn. And that is helpful to me, knowing that if I need, you know, well, let's segue into when I actually use this yarn. Because this is such small balls and such small remnants, I would have to pull one of the really larger ones, like maybe this teal one here. I could pull that, and that would probably be enough for a beanie, right? But then that's it. And so I would have to like rearrange the yarn around it, which would be perfectly fine because it's all wedged in there so nice and tight, you know, that I could make it work to go back through. But if you're looking at some of these smaller balls, especially these, like right here, these little guys, that's not going to be enough to make anything by itself. So they can chill on the wall until maybe I'm making a amigurumi. Let's just say I'm making a, I don't know, a little stuffed teddy bear or something, and he needs a certain color of eyes, and I'm going to crochet these eyes, so that, or a stomach or something that I can sew onto his body, right? Then I would pull just whatever color I fancy, crochet whatever that is up, applique it or sew it onto whatever part of his body that it's going on, and stuff the rest of that ball back up into where it belongs, where it came from. So I really only use the yarn that's up there very rarely, and for very small things, like when I did, do you remember? Yes, we did talk about that in one of the previous podcasts. We talk about the holiday variations of the Dandy dog sweater. And so the one that has the Santa on it with the gold belt, it's just a rectangle gold belt, crochet, double crochet, that's it, easy peasy. That I pulled from my yarn wall right in this general vicinity right here. And I just put it right back up there when I was done. So that is how I use most of the yarn that is on my wall. Okay, the next thing is, does it get dusty? You know, I really don't notice that. I mean, I suppose I could go through with my vacuum cleaner and just kind of like dust it off a little bit, but I really don't notice it at all. Another thing is I do not have cats, so I don't know how that would, you know, play in if you do have cats or several of them. Sometimes you'll notice that some of my yarn tails kind of hang down, like I don't know if they get twisted or what, but then I have a yarn tail hanging down. I just kind of pick it up and just kind of tuck it back in there. Like, nobody needs to know. It's fine. It's fine. So yeah, another question that I get a lot about my yarn wall is, what about the label? Like, if you are using up, let's say that you're using up this skein of yarn, and you know that it's the last bit of the last skein that you have of this particular color or brand or whatever, what you can do if you want to remember what colorway it is, what dye lot it is, what brand it is even, you can wind it up on your yarn winder, which I'll show you here in just a second, mine. It's pretty fancy if I do say so myself. And take that yarn label and just tuck it in the center of the ball, because when you pull the yarn off of your yarn winder, it has this hole in it from the chamber of the yarn winder itself, right? So before it kind of collapses in on itself, roll up that yarn label really tight and just kind of shove it down in the middle. Then you can just put the peg on the wall, if you're using a peg, just straight through the center of that yarn label, and poof, there you go. You know exactly what yarn this is. Or you could, if you wanted to, depending, you know, like even if you're not using a yarn wall storage and you just want to wind your cakes so that they're easier to store on a bookshelf or something in a cubby, you could still wind your yarn with your yarn winder into a cake, and then take that label, cut off the non-pertinent information, you know, like the barcode and the whatever. We don't care about that. We just want to know the information of what brand it is, what color it is, you know, what weight it is, and all of that good stuff. Take a hole punch a hole in the corner, and then tie it with the end of your yarn, and then just kind of tuck it in. You can use a bobby pin to secure it, or one of those clippies that has the, you know, the ones that snap into place like that. Snap it on the side of your cake like that, and you can put it in your storage that way as well. So definitely options, you know, so that when you're winding these cakes, you can remember and go back and use them in the future. So most of the yarn that is on my wall is worsted weight. I'm going to say a good 99% of the yarn that is up there is worsted weight. Most of it, I have no idea what the brand is. Sometimes you can tell once you work with enough different brands of worsted weight continuously. You can kind of tell when you touch it and when you see it and when, you know, you feel it. What brand is this? Is this Red Heart, or is it Brava, or is it I Love This Yarn, or is it Lion Brand? You know, you can kind of get a feel for it. So, I mean, but if you're only using it for embellishments and amigurumi or anything like that, then it doesn't really matter. I mean, not to me, it doesn't. So, let's talk about this yarn winder that I have here. So I do have a post entirely about yarn winders, because there are different levels of yarn winders. I mean, there's the economy level, which can run anywhere between $15 and $22-ish. And then there's this bad boy that I have here that I got. I can't remember when I got him. It's been a while, but he is a Stanwood 10-ounce winder. And this is the big daddy of all yarn winders, okay? What you'll notice with the standard, the cheaper ones that are more inexpensive ones, they work just fine. And honestly, I wound all of this yarn, or a good portion of it, before I got this guy. So I wound it on the smaller, more inexpensive yarn winder, right? Which only holds up to 4 ounces of yarn, which can be problematic when you're doing some of these big guys right here, which some of these bigger ones here could be an entire skein of yarn, really. So this one right here holds up to 10 ounces, which is enough to wind any regular size skein of yarn. So I Love This Yarn from Hobby Lobby, or Big Twist from Joann, or Impeccable from Michaels, or Brava from We Crochet or Knit Picks. Any single one of those skeins of yarn, the entire thing will fit on this winder. So that is something that I really value about this. I also value the fact that the prongs and everything it seems to be of a much more durable material. So I know that it's going to, you know, last me forever, and it just works really nicely. I just love it. So what I have done, if you have a Stanwood 10 ounce as well, or even if you have the other one, what I have done with this one, and I feel like it's pretty ingenious, and I have to share it with you because I'm just, you know, I'm proud. I have this stool, this little bar stool that I got at Walmart, and I don't even know how much it was, 10 bucks, 15 bucks, you know, the cheapy ones. You could find one at the thrift store if you're lucky. But I have attached it to this stool, and I've used a screw, and I've actually attached it to the top of the bar stool. Like, this is on there permanently. You know, I can take it off if I want to, but it's not going anywhere. And so what I love about this is I can take it and I pick it up just like this, and I can move it over to my craft space, or I can pick it up in here and I can take it out into the living room if I'm going to be winding and watching Netflix or something, you know. But I can move this wherever I want, and I absolutely love that about this design. You can do this with the less expensive winders as well. They do also have little things. You might want to use some kind of a clamp or something that goes down. This is actually a cable fitting that you would use to secure, cable on your home. So anything like that has just a little boop, a little bump in it that you can secure to the top of a piece. And then if I, you know, I can't imagine this ever happening, but if I wanted to take this off of here for some weird reason and use the bar stool like a normal person, then you just take the screw off and you're fine. You have a little hole in there, but who cares? I mean, right? Who cares? It is serving its purpose well for me, and I am loving that, right? So when you are using a yarn winder, it may be necessary for you to also use a yarn swift. So if you're winding the rest of a skein, I would just take wherever you clipped your yarn from where you fastened off, I would just take that, feed it through the yarn winder, wind it up, call it good, no big deal, right? If you are winding a brand new skein of yarn that is in a hank, something that you get from like a fancy yarn shop, let me pick one up for you. So this is a skein of the Muse, and this is what I used to make the Tunisian smock set, right? And I absolutely love this color. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Isn't it beautiful? I just love it. So squishy and so beautiful and vibrant, and it's hand painted, which is just lovely. So anyway, it's in a hank, right? This is all wound up just like this in a hank. Now, if you are going to wind this, you can't just take it apart and wind it because it will be a complete mess, you know. It just will. You can put it on the back of a chair, like if you have a wooden dining room table, you can put it on the back of a chair and let it, you know, wind off that way. That will work. If you have a helper, so you have a kid handy or a spouse handy, you can have them put their feet out like this on the ottoman and like wrap the whole yarn around their feet like this and have them kind of flex their toes just a little bit so that the whole thing doesn't fall off their feet. But that is another way that you can wind it without a swift, right? So you can get creative with it, but the one thing you do not want to do in this instance is just lay it on the floor and just start winding, because it will be trust me, just don't do it. I have done it, and I am telling you now as a friend, not recommended, 0 stars. Do not recommend, don't do it. So I do have a very handy swift, and this one is from We Crochet, and I absolutely love it. It's got this really cute little holder. Not that I would, you know, take it anywhere, but I almost want to put my yoga mat in here, which I haven't been to yoga since my gym closed for quarantine. I let my membership expire, but whatever. So in here, I have my swift. This is a swift that you would use to wind your yarn. Now, what you're going to do, you've got a slot, and there are different levels of swift. There's ones that you can get, and I've linked all of this in the yarn winder post that I will put in the description below, but you can get a yarn swift on Amazon for as little as 15 bucks. Like, they're not bad at all. And if you're going to be using it regularly enough, it's totally worth it. So this is actually, I think this is birchwood, but I really love this one. Any swift that you get is going to have a place for you to attach it to a tabletop. I use my kitchen counter because it's just there and it's easier. And then you just tighten this to get it, you know, to stay in place while you're winding. Now, what you're going to do is pull up the swift just a little bit to where it starts doing that, right? You don't want it too much, maybe about halfway. Then you're gonna take that yarn hank and open it up so that it's one huge loop, and you're gonna wrap it around the entire thing. And then you're gonna push this up a little bit more to get it nice, not super stretched, but you want it to be, you know, pretty open. And then tighten up so that it stays open. And then you're gonna have your yarn wrapped around it. You're gonna put it on your yarn winder, and you're just gonna wind your yarn. And that's it. And it's super fast, super easy, right? And once you get the hang of it, this is something that I'd actually paid my boys to do a lot when they were younger and they wanted, you know, to buy a video game or something. I'd say, okay, you know, I've got all of these skeins of yarn that are partially used that I haven't had the time to wind yet. So you go wind them. I'll give you $0.25 for every full skein that you wind, or whatever. Usually they'd only do about 6 of them a piece. I'm like, for $1.50, or $3, you know, between the two of them, like, please go wind my yarn, you know, and then I throw it up on the wall and it's fine. But yeah, so this is actually a very easy, very quick way for you to organize your yarn. Even if you're not putting it up on the yarn wall, to organize in cubbies or anything like that, and much more stackable than just using, you know, throwing the partial skein in there and having it be all floppy and just a huge mess. It can be just a huge mess. And so yes, this is my lovely yarn swift. I'll put a link to it in the bottom of the description as well. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is project organization. So we've talked about yarn organization for the most part, and I can't think if I've missed anything. Those are the questions that I usually get, is about dust. Do I use it? You know, and that's one of the most beautiful things about my yarn wall. I know I'm regressing here, but one of the most beautiful things to me about my yarn wall is how it is an actual living art, because I may not use it often, but every time I do, it moves and it morphs and it's different every time you look at it. And I just think that's just so beautiful, you know, and I don't know, it just makes me feel really connected to my craft. So I love that. The last thing that I wanted to talk about are these project organization, my favorite project organization tip. Now, for me, that is, I constantly have multiple projects going at once. And I mean, I could be right in the middle of my third project and I'm already thinking about my fourth. Like, how am I gonna do that? Or how am I gonna do that? You know, so for me, keeping organized is a huge deal, and I've learned over the years that I have to write everything down. Write it down because, oh, I'll remember. No, you won't. That's not how my brain works. I mean, I can figure it out again, but it's so much easier if I just write everything down. And then, you know, if I change my mind on something, I can very lightly X out and write the newer version of whatever I did. So if I need to go back and say, oh, well, actually that one probably would have worked out better, I can go back and look at that lightly crossed out version of whatever it is that I was working on. I'm a big physical paper and pencil kind of girl, and I very rarely write anything in pen unless I know for certain, you know, that I'm super excited about whatever it is that I'm working on. So anyway, leading up to that, I have these photo books, right? All of these photo books that have partially crocheted projects in them, and I am able to keep, if I wanted to, I could put all of the notes that I have for that particular project in the box with the item, right? So this one here, I have these shorts that I've been meaning to finish forever, but I have them in here with the hook that goes with it. If I don't want to put the hook in there, I could, and I would, just write the, you know, J hook or I hook or whatever hook I was using. I would also put the brand down if I was using something other than my go-to hook, because like we discussed in the gauge video, simply switching the brand of your hook can completely change the gauge of your stitches. So if you are going to pull the hook or not put the hook in with it, like this one, I'm using a Furls I hook, and I just know that because I literally just looked at it. But I would write Furls I hook staycation shorts or whatever. And then I know that I've got all of the good stuff in here. See, here's my Furls I hook that is just chilling. Now, if I needed to use that hook for something else, that is when I would write it on the outside. But I have found that having them in these photo boxes is so much easier and stackable, right? This is a corner to corner project that I'm working on that should hopefully be published in the next week or two. But I know I know that all of the things that I need for this particular project are right inside of this box. And so I can have these all stacked in the corner nicely and neatly instead of thrown into a basket or thrown in the corner or thrown next to my crochet chair or anything like that. I have all of these beautiful photo boxes that are just stackable. Now, I will say, I wouldn't run out and just buy a whole bunch of photo boxes. You know, unless they're on sale. They're usually run around $2.50 to $3, maybe up to $5, depending on if you get the bigger ones. A hat box would work really well as well, depending on the size of your project. But they do go on sale a lot of times after Christmas. So if you're watching this live, here in a couple weeks, you should be able to get a ton of these photo boxes for super cheap, as low as $1. And when they do that, I mean, hello, I'm getting a ton of them because they just look so much classier sitting there all stacked nicely and neatly in their pretty little boxes than my projects just laying around strewn everywhere with yarn literally everywhere. And another thing is, if you do have cats, put them in a box. You know what I mean? Not the cat. Put your project in a box and poof, you know, it makes it just that much cleaner and that much neater. Now, if you get a lot of these boxes, especially the larger ones, it kind of looks cool when you have all of them stacked up next to each other. It's kind of like, you know, have you ever seen those end tables that are just a whole bunch of suitcases, like old suitcases stacked on top of each other, and then you have like a lamp and a book or whatever on top of it? Kind of like that. Like it's kind of a home decor thing at that point, you know. But so yeah, that's one of my favorite tips on staying organized in your crochet. You could also use if you have any of those bed in a bag with all the comforters and the shams and everything else, you could have those if for like a big blanket, use those too, and just write on there, have a little label or something that you just put on there, write with a Sharpie, so-and-so's blanket, whatever hook size I'm using this yarn, this is the dye lot, whatever, you know, add any pertinent information that you may need to work on that project in the future. So that is all I have to share with you today. If you have any questions about yarn organization or any tips that I did not have here, please, I need them. Like I said, I look really organized, but that is not always the case. So I am in desperate need myself. I feel like I've got a lot going on here, a lot of good things going on, a lot of good tips, but like I said, you will always find more ways to, you know, be proactive with organization, and not just in yarn, just everything in general in the house. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time on the Heart Hook Home Video Crochet Podcast Series.